All right, welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a terrifying 1987 incident out of Gandhinagar, Delhi, and flipping it into something super practical, a step-by-step survival guide for recognizing a haunted house. We're looking at Ramesh Majumdar and his family. They moved into what they thought was a dream rental to save a few bucks and walked straight into a literal nightmare. So we're going to break down exactly what they experienced so you know exactly what to watch out for. So here's the game plan for our paranormal survival guide. We've got spotting red flags, dismissing early signs, escalating threats, the final warning, and finally, the tragic history. And here is the actual survival checklist the Majumdar family had to learn the hard way. Acknowledge the red flags, don't ignore the anomalies, definitely heed the physical warnings, evacuate immediately, and always research local history. Keep these in your back pocket as we dive into this. All right, let's jump right into step one, spotting those red flags. Okay, check out this classic clash between saving a buck and ignoring some seriously ominous local rumors. Ramesh, who was this super pragmatic guy working for the railways, was completely focused on the cheap rent and having his aunt nearby. He even happily threw down a 2-month advance. But here's the kicker. His own sister, that same aunt, straight up warned him against it. She told him the place was historically vacant, had a terrible reputation, and literally told him to look elsewhere. Look, ignoring local lore just for a good deal? Yeah, that's red flag number one right there. Then there's the layout of the place. When they moved in, they found this open courtyard downstairs, and their rented room is up in this corridor. But right across from them, another room, and it is mysteriously, permanently locked. The elderly landlords just brushed it off, claiming it belonged to their son in the U.S. I mean, an off-limits locked room sharing your family's personal living space? Huge, massive red flag. Moving on to step two, dismissing early signs. This is where the denial really sets in. Just look at how incredibly fast things go sideways here. We're talking 6 days. Day 1, the mother feels this deep, heavy unease, but they brush it off as travel stress. By day 5, she literally watches a clear shadow glide right across the curtain and slip into that locked room. Ramesh's response? He just tells her she's imagining things. But the absolute tipping point is day 6, when they find their 2-year-old son laughing and playing with a completely unseen entity. And this is where cultural folklore crashes into terrifying reality. In West Bengal, parents use the story of the how, basically a boogeyman, to scare kids into behaving. But when this mother saw her toddler giggling and interacting with thin air, the how stopped being a bedtime story. She realized her kid wasn't just using his imagination, he was actively engaging with something she just couldn't see. So, naturally, she panics and goes to the landlords. And what do? Classic gaslighting. These elderly landlords completely brush off her terror. They're like, oh, he must have just seen a cat, our house is perfectly fine. They are actively covering up their own dark secret just to keep that rental income flowing. Critical survival lesson for you all: never, ever let someone dismiss your own firsthand experiences. Which brings us to step 3, escalating supernatural threats. Things get physical. Look at this 48-hour window. It's basically a blaring alarm siren that this family needs to get out, like, yesterday. Day 6, 4 p.m., the mother is sleeping, and an invisible force physically yanks the blanket right off of her. That same evening, she hears this aggressive, guttural growl. And then, the morning of day 8, total violence. The child is shoved entirely off the bed by an invisible hand. And we've got to talk about the impossible geometry of that growl. The mother heard this ferocious sound coming straight from a first-floor window. The problem? That window faced a completely empty, narrow alleyway. No ledges, no balconies, absolutely zero way for a human being to physically stand there. It's a localized anomaly that completely shatters the laws of physics. Then Sunday morning hits, and the haunting goes full-on offensive. The mother hears this dark, menacing whisper right in her ear. She absolutely panics, grabs her son Sarthik, and runs. But as they're fleeing down the stairs, this invisible force violently shoves them from behind. The kid actually gets a head injury from the fall. Listen, when the environment starts physically attacking you, Survival 101 says you evacuate immediately. All right, step 4, the final warning, the climax of this whole nightmare. So it's Sunday evening. Ramesh finally sends his family over to the aunt's house, but he actually stays behind to write a letter. He's still clinging to logic. Suddenly, there's a knock on that second-story window, and Ramesh, still playing the skeptic, assumes it's a burglar. He actually grabs a stick to go confront a human thief, having absolutely no idea what he's about to face. And then he gets hit with this chilling verbal threat: "Get out of here, or I'll kill everyone." Now remember, this is the exact same horrific phrase that was whispered directly into the mother's ear just hours earlier, right before they were shoved down those stairs. It's not just spooky anymore. It's an undeniable, highly aggressive ultimatum. But the horror show isn't over. Ramesh pulls back the curtain, fully expecting a thief with a ladder. Instead, he sees a girl. Wide eyes, completely disheveled hair, and she is literally floating in midair outside a second-story window. She stares right into his soul and repeats that exact same threat. In that split second, Ramesh's skepticism completely shatters. He locks the door and runs for his life. And that brings us to our final step: uncovering the tragic history. Safe on the outside, Ramesh finally talks to the neighbors and uncovers the absolutely devastating local lore. Remember that Locke's room? The landlords had a 22-year-old daughter who lived in it. When her parents forbade her from marrying the person she chose, she committed suicide right there in that exact room. And because the parents' egos were so bruised, they denied her the proper last rites, basically trapping her vengeful spirit right there in the house. And get this, the absolute worst part: a previous tenant's child had already been pushed off the roof to his death by this exact entity. The landlords knew all of it, and they rented the place out anyway. By day 9, Ramesh finally completes our little survival tutorial. He marches straight up to the landlord and demands his deposit back. The landlord actually makes his totally bizarre plea, asking Ramesh to send his family away but stay in the house alone. Honestly, no way. Ramesh totally ignores him, prioritizes his family's safety over the cash, and escapes the cursed property for good. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought for your next big move. We all know how tempting a great deal can be, but if you found an incredibly cheap apartment and it just happened to have a permanently locked room, would you ignore the red flags? Keep these survival steps in your back pocket, learn from Ramesh's 1987 nightmare, and trust your gut. Thanks for joining me for this crazy case study, and hey, stay safe out there.